cigarettes.
Debilitating levels of
Loneliness is killing me.
Loneliness. If you've watched Bo Burnham's Inside, you've heard about it before, and experts say it's as bad as eating 15 cigarettes a day. But what is loneliness really? And is it a problem? The answer to both of those questions is yes.
Because loneliness is a problem that has existed behind the shadows for too long. And I came to realize this when I first began my tenure as Surgeon General, and I traveled the country and would talk to people who would tell me that they were lonely, but they wouldn't use that word. They would say things like, I feel I have to carry all these burdens in my life by myself, or I feel if I disappear tomorrow, nobody would care, or I feel invisible.
Don't feel anything.
Right. And it turns out that millions of people struggle with loneliness. So when you dig into the data, what you find is that about 1 in 2 adults in America was reporting levels of loneliness. And these numbers are even greater among kids. But what you also find is that loneliness has serious effects on our mental health and our physical health, raising our risk for depression, anxiety, and suicide, but also increasing our risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, and premature death.
Loneliness is a massive problem that's only gotten worse. We know this because earlier this year, researchers published this paper. And these are the graphs they came up with. Using a national survey tracking people's habits on random days for 17 years, researchers found that between 2003 and 2020, people started spending a lot more time alone and a lot less time with friends, family, and acquaintances. Like you heard the Surgeon General explain earlier, that's a big deal. It's not like people are a little lonely, so they feel sad for a bit, and then happy for a bit, and it all kind of evens out. We're spending a lot more time alone, which is bad for both our mental and our physical health. Everything from depression to dementia to heart disease gets worse the lonelier we are, and the data shows that's an increasingly large number of us. And while the pandemic brought this into focus and made things even worse, the researchers behind this study stressed that these trends were already there well before COVID started. We've been on this path for a while. So who do we blame? Smart.
We talked a lot about the phone. We talked about the way technology has changed our lives, made us a little more insular, even though we're connected in digital ways.
And technology has utterly transformed how we interact with one another. Now, tech can be good or bad. It can help us or hurt us.
Technology has transformed the way we live and work now, where these connections are happening on Zoom, online.
Phones. Could you stop that? Smartphones. In a lot of the interviews and public addresses you've probably seen about the loneliness epidemic, phones, social media, and technology in general get blamed, taking up a lot of airtime. And don't get me wrong, social media definitely has a bad effect on our mental health. We've known this for a really long time now, and just about every study we've ever done confirms it. For example, a study that came out just this year found that more social media time equals worse mental health. And as a solution, it recommends that, quote, social media users be cautious when interacting with social media features, especially likes, comments, followers, media, and posts, because of their significant effect on mental health. Yes, phone bad. But phone not only thing bad. While social media for sure has a role in this crisis of loneliness, something a lot bigger is either completely absent from or barely glossed over in these interviews. Something that socialists have known contributes to isolation for a long time. And that's alienation. For centuries now, socialist thinkers led by the dapper young Marx have anticipated that capitalism would produce the kind of acute loneliness we're experiencing today. And if you've heard about alienation before, watching these news segments can be a little frustrating. Before we explain what it is, alienation is a structural feature of our capitalist society. It's almost universal, and for the most part, out of our control. That's important, because when these reports downplay it or don't acknowledge it, which is almost always the case, it leads them to conclude that while loneliness affects a lot of people, it's ultimately an individual problem with individual solutions.
And finally, their personal practices. Look, in all of our lives, we can do simple things, like taking 15 minutes a day to reach out to and connect to someone we care about, to make sure that we are giving people our full attention when we're talking to them in conversation and aren't distracted by our phones. And
at the end of the day, as you say, the solutions are on us. It's on people, it's on individuals, on families, on groups of friends to do something. And these relationships do take work, as we're reminded. I feel like I'm in touch.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Speak Your Mind. We have another topic for all of you who watch us right now, whether it be through YouTube, whether it be through Facebook, or even Tuber. You can send us a message right now Our lines are open, and the topic today we are talking about loneliness, the loneliness epidemic, and that's the question right there. Has loneliness become a serious problem? You can let us know, and in the duration of the program, we are going to be talking to people. We're going to be reading comments. I do not find myself here by myself, no, but I have Ms. Lupita. Ms. Lupita, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Good on this cold night.
Are you used to this type of weather?
Yes. I want to say yes. I'm trying to get myself used to it.
Perfect. Well, this person who is watching us now, they can also join our poll, correct?
Yes, so they could definitely scan the QR code that's right there on the screen, and you could definitely follow us and vote. Cast your vote there. And or you could send us a message through our WhatsApp, which is 437-233-9815, and we're going to be able to read your comments here on air.
Perfect. And I think I already have the first person, which is Brenda. Let's see if we can connect Brenda now on the line. Ms. Brenda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
How you doing, Ms. Brenda? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm doing great.
Ms.
Thank
Brenda,
you.
we're asking everybody the following question about loneliness. Do you think it's something that has started to become a serious problem? Do you think it's not as bad as it sounds to be lonely? What's your opinion on this?
So my opinion is that I think it has become a problem, especially after the pandemic has happened. So after that pandemic has happened, a lot of us, have enclosed ourselves with the world, with, like losing the real connection between a person and a person, interacting, with other people out there. And it just became more of a loneliness type of situation where, yes, we can reach out to other people via like social media, text message, phone calls, but it hasn't been the same as it was before the pandemic. So within that, time frame that majority of us have been, just like being in our home, not, going out. And it's just kind of like they adapt to that world. And it's just become, like a problem where they just, they don't want to go out anymore and they just want to stay, by themselves and, just be alone, not interacting with other people. And it just brings that into a long term where it would, later on develop into depression and just, makes them feel like, hey, I'm not, I don't have anybody to count on anymore, or I don't have, the same friends that I used to have. And they just, start developing those thoughts within their mind, within themselves, like, oh yeah, well, I'm not, they probably, my friends probably forgot about me, or, I'm just like non-existent. So I feel like it has, become like a problem, especially nowadays, within that. And, I've seen it, with some coworkers that I work with that, they just feel like they're so, lonely the whole time because they just don't have that interaction that they used to have before. And sometimes when I get to talk to them, they're just like, yeah, I just don't feel like going out anymore.
Yeah.
I just want to stay by myself and, just listen to music, just don't have anybody bother me. And, it kind of brings them into a whole different type of perspective that is just, it's better for them to be alone and not connect with other people. But I feel like, from that point of view, the people that had been separated from, like their interactions and having those connections with other people, I feel like we should still, reach out to them and check on them just to make sure that they are doing well and, just tend like to push them out, like a little bit more out of, that zone where they were for a while and just, hang out with them and see how they are emotionally. And
Now, Ms. Brenda, quick question. When it comes to somebody who feels lonely, do you think those people automatically have something linked with sadness or depression? Or do you think there are just some people who really do like being by themselves? Or do you, Ms. Brenda, like being around people all the time?
I think it could go both ways. I think for loneliness, one, it could be good at the same time, just because, you know, you have that time to by yourself where you can just reflect and just think for yourself and just kind of have that moment to you. But at the same time, if you let it go for too long, then it can develop into a depression down the line where you're just like constantly and frequently being by yourself, which is, I'm not saying that it's bad to be, you know, by yourself once in a while, but I feel like if it's a constant thing, then, you know, it would develop into a depression down the line. And,
Ms.
you know,
Brenda.
that's where the problem can start.
Ms. Brenda, thank you so much for speaking your mind. Have a good night, okay?
Thank you, you too.
Take care. Have a good one. We ask the following question now. We want you to keep it 100. We want you to keep it, as we say, a buck. Do you feel lonely? Are you lonely? I want you to watch this video, and we'll be right back with all of you.
Are you lonely?
Yeah.
How come?
Are you gonna make me emotional?
Are you lonely?
Am I lonely?
Jesus Christ. It's tough. Like, I have a very social job. I live with 3 other people. I have 3 different romantic partners. I should say no.
But
Exactly. But
Loneliness for me, it manifests as like feeling, even though I'll be surrounded by people, I feel just emotionally isolated.
I feel lonely when I feel like I don't want to burden people with my problems. If I am feeling lonely, I will like kind of shut myself down more.
Sometimes I get really into my head.
I like to bury everything within myself.
are you lonely?
Oh, absolutely.
I am right now because I'm pregnant and I've been at home for like 8 weeks because I've been really sick.
Are you lonely?
I'm not lonely. I am alone. Very 2 different things.
In a way, I'm lonely, but I kind of like it.
I'm an introvert. I like myself.
I do live stream daily, so I don't really crave that like in-person experience.
Most of the time, I'm like, please, someone leave me alone.
I don't even want to be around people. Like, it's like overstimulation.
I would love to be lonely for a little bit. I have 2 kids, a partner, a baby daddy. I am never, ever lonely.
I have 2 mini-me's that are like always near me. Like I can't poop with the door shut.
I don't really feel lonely. Got a dog.
How long have you had your dog?
A year now.
Are you lonely?
No.
Have you ever been lonely?
Oh yeah, I have. I get lonely sometimes.
Sometimes I think everybody's lonely sometimes.
What's the loneliest you've been?
Right after my ex-husband moved out,
I had just asked my husband to leave. My dad had just passed away. My mom was already gone. And I think that was the loneliest, darkest part of my life.
When were you at your loneliest?
Probably the end of my second marriage. Spent a year on the couch. That was pretty lonely.
Living by myself for the first time.
last year was my first year of college and I moved across the country. I just moved here from Bangkok, Thailand.
It's very lonely seeing all your other friends hang out with each other, but you're not there.
I get FOMO a lot.
I live alone. I really like hanging out with people, and sometimes I think I rely on that too much. I have a lot going on in my head all the time, and it gets so much louder when people aren't around me.
When are you at your loneliest?
Usually when I'm in a room full of people.
Sometimes I just feel like I'm not totally myself around people.
I don't feel like anyone has the same interests I do.
I feel like all the people like I do surround myself with, I'm just with them because it feels better than being alone.
There's always times when you like start overthinking around like 10 p.m. sitting in bed trying to figure out like who's actually means anything to you.
I just get isolated sometimes in my own head.
Well, I wouldn't say it would be like, oh, I'm lonely because I'm not like hanging out with someone. I think just like overanalyzing like my future or thinking too much.
When were you at your loneliest?
I think very beginning of COVID.
Having a baby right before COVID. I was already on top of the hormones and going through postpartum and all of that. Then we're stuck inside and I don't know when we're going to get out. So that was a really hard time for me.
I work from home now. I miss being able to like groups going out places.
Pretty much everything is virtual. You know, it's really nothing like seeing each other in person.
When are you at your loneliest?
when you call someone and they don't answer. Also, when you like leave a big gathering and then all of a sudden you're by yourself.
I think I'm at my loneliest when I'm happy because I want to like spend it with somebody or like a friend. And then you like go through your messages or like your contacts and you don't have anybody to hit up.
I'd say I wish I had more friends.
I don't have a lot of friends.
More close friends.
More close friends.
Friends.
Girlfriends.
I feel like I just don't have like a best friend that like I can tell anything to, but I do have a cat, so he listens to me.
So I just remember being in late middle school and I had a group of friends and we were very close. I've seen where they're at and I don't think we would be that kind of friends now, but I miss that kind of relationship.
Are you lonely?
Not right now, actually.
I don't think I am.
No,
I would not consider myself lonely.
I'm actually not, and I think that's a privilege for me to say that.
I think I have a good wealth of friends.
No.
I say that questioningly because I'm an only child, so I've like learned to entertain myself.
Walking clubs are taking off, and it's not just the exercise.
You're connecting with someone, which is something that I was kind of missing.
More and more people are missing that connection and are feeling lonely.
The pandemic poured fuel on a fire that was already burning.
Dr. Vivek Murthy, the U.S. Surgeon General, says loneliness is an epidemic, the focus of an 80-page advisory he is releasing today.
We're used to thinking about smoking and obesity as clear public health concerns.
So you're saying loneliness is comparable to smoking in terms of the detriment to your health?
Yeah, in terms of the risk that it poses for premature death, yes.
Half of U.S. adults experience measurable loneliness, and it's greater among young adults.
When you struggle with loneliness, when you're socially disconnected, it increases your risk of depression and anxiety and suicide, but it also increases your risk of physical illness as well.
Loneliness increases the risk for heart disease, stroke, and among older adults, dementia. The cure, Dr. Murthy says, is not only personal change, but societal change as well.
What we need to do is actually rebuild social infrastructure in our country.
You're talking about changing the social fabric. That's been decades in the making.
It's been decades in the making, but it's also something that I'm confident that we can address if we put our mind to it and if we act together.
Among his recommendations, a focus on community organizations, mobilizing the health sector to raise awareness, and reconsidering how we use technology.
In-person matters. Connecting online has its place, has its value, but it's not a substitute for in-person connection. We really do need both.
Cultivating and supporting time together, face-to-face, because our health depends on it. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
And we're back with all of you. If you in this moment, maybe you can relate to what we're talking about. You're somebody who says, you know what, sometimes I feel a little lonely. I feel like I'm by myself. You can give us a call. 877-785-8700. In a little bit with Lupita, we're going to read some comments, but I have Miss Seleni on the line. Let's see if we can connect her. Miss Seleni, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Miss, we've been asking everybody the following question about loneliness. Do you think that it's something that is spreading rapidly? What do you think about loneliness? There are some people who kind of like being by themselves. You want to speak your mind on this?
Yes. So my opinion is that loneliness nowadays with today's society, it's a common thing because a lot of people hide behind a screen. A lot of people hide behind, the phone, the social media, and that is a thing especially among the young community, that it's a common thing. Nowadays, if you go to the parks, you see young adults in their phone, even though they're next to each other, that they don't have communication. There's not a communication among that. And loneliness itself, it's a thing that it's a thing. It's hard to come by. It's hard to overcome that because it causes anxiety. It causes a lot of you can say a lot of separation among the community. If that makes if it makes sense.
Now, Seleni, what would you say then to the people who say they're introverts, they're the lone wolf, they like staying by themselves? Do you think that automatically attaches it to loneliness? You think it automatically attaches it to anxiety, to depression?
So in all means, there is there's a time and place for everything. There's times that the person does need a moment of silence, to be alone. But whenever that alone time becomes that one thing of being overly excessively, then that right there, it can contribute to being a depression and to being isolation, and that depression and isolation can cause the person to have a lot of traumatic thoughts, a lot of thoughts of nowadays suicide, and being excessively alone. It's in my opinion, that is a being cause of depression.
Ms. Eleni, thank you so much for speaking your mind, for sharing your thoughts. Have a good night, okay?
Thank you.
Take care. Ms. Lupita, do we have any comments based on our topic?
Yes, so we have the comment here from Matthew. He says, in my opinion, yes, these days loneliness is becoming a growing problem in the fast-paced lifestyle. Loneliness means a state of which is unpleasant, and it mostly happens in isolation. Again, if we see earlier days, there wasn't technology, so people used to communicate, share. But these days, all the information comes to you through your fingertips. So there is less communication and more judgments because we communicate through certain medias, not directly. Now, the problem is growing. The culture we use to live in is changing. It should be taken into consideration by all of us. And we also have Raven here that says, while I think there are many factors contributing to increased isolation and loneliness, one thing I have consistently seen is that the men I know often have few friends to turn to, while women in all my life have at least a few intimate friendships. I have no data to ascertain if this is a recent societal development, but I can often see that we worry about how our husbands and boyfriends are in this respect. They are intelligent, wonderful, and seemingly confident, who are happy to accompany us to parties or other gatherings. So we know that she probably thinks that men mostly, are the ones that are suffering through this loneliness. So they are sharing their comments, and you can too. You can send us a message through WhatsApp, which is 437-233-9815.
Now I want to go with the streets of Toronto. We asked a bunch of people here in the beautiful city of Toronto, and this is what they said. We'll be right back.
The stats are showing that more and more people are suffering from loneliness. Do you think what can help combat this epidemic?
An easy one, but maybe hard, talking to strangers.
I think that there's two things. Number one, if you are feeling lonely, you've also got to take a little bit of accountability for it. In Canada here, there are so many incredible things and ways that the community can get together, and it's actually for free. For example, where we live, we have the York Recreation Centre. There's a ton of free programmings there, table tennis, tennis, squash, swimming, activities that bring people together. So have a look and see what's happening. There's tons that is for free. There's tons that's happening in your community. And this is Canada. There's really a ton of resources here that aren't available in other places around the world.
This place have millions of people, but you're still lonely. Number one, the phone take you away from your loved ones. Yeah. Number two, we don't seek the God of heaven and all of these things. You're here and you're thinking, oh, we come to Canada. It's like a big place. There's everything, but you're still lonely.
What factor do you think contributes to the epidemic in our society?
I think it's something that mostly, I believe, impacts older people. And it's because people get isolated when their families move away or get busy with other things. I think the second thing that impacts it is that we tend not to truly check in with people. There's a big difference between checking on someone, i.e. scrolling their Instagram page or their Facebook, versus actually checking in on someone, which means phoning them and finding out what really is going on. People love to represent their highlight reel on social media, but if you really want to find out how someone's doing, check in on them, and that means a phone call. That means meeting up and going for a coffee or a beer in your local pub, whatever it may be.
Since COVID, things change, right? COVID robbed us of like a lot of stuff. You couldn't go to work. For me, I never sick, and COVID made me sick by giving me diabetes, because I'm always going, and because I locked away in the house, then everything just closed down. So COVID is one. Sometimes you don't have family here. You leave your country, sometimes you come here and you think, oh, this is this big place. I'm going to build my house in a year. I'm going to do this. And it's not like that, because sometimes we cannot get job, especially me now. I am up there in age. I work harder than the young people, but you still can't find a job. So you get lonely, because if you can't pay your bills, moreover, what we make for our money, like pay weekly, it cannot cover rent. So you must stress, you must depress, you must feel lonely. Rent is like 2-bedroom for how many, or 1-bedroom? If you don't have $2,000, what we make, $16 an hour. How can we go through? So that alone just make you feel sad, make you feel down, make you feel lonely.
I think COVID did that was a big thing where people got used to being by themselves. If you didn't have, let's say, a family or living with someone, and then you get used to it. That's a problem. So you get used to being inside, or you get used to not having a clear picture if it's safe. So it's a downward spiral in a way. And I think it was long enough for people to get used to it. They didn't know what to do.
How do you think communities can help with epidemic of loneliness?
Well, I live in a community where there is food banks, because we have to turn to food bank. And I went there, I missed 1 week, and I went there, and even if I was dying for hunger that day, they didn't give me anything, right? Because I missed my date. I have to wait another 2 weeks. So it's not easy. So the community, everybody in the community have their situation, their problem, depressed, stress, no job, rent is high. All of these things cause that, Back home, you may have your family. How can you work to buy your ticket to go home once or twice a year? It's not that. We need more money, and that will help us. Plus Jesus Christ, my Lord.
It's like I'm filling up and then I'm going to explode with like all of these thoughts. And I always feel it in my shoulders when I'm getting anxious or worried about something. It's like this weird bubbly feeling in my shoulders.
Angel has struggled with loneliness since a young age.
I think there is a possibility that it could have been passed on to me, because again, we are so close and we're very similar. I look up to her, I copy her, so it's probably natural that things like that I've picked up from her.
Loneliness is something Angel and her mum have in common. They support each other, but it can be tough.
I was born in London, but actually we moved to Lincolnshire when I was really, really young. There's nobody who looks like me there, really. I'm really tall, mixed race, so I didn't really fit in my school. So I always stood out, and I really desperately wanted to fit in.
Angel thought university in London would be a new beginning, but her mental health issues followed her.
I felt like everybody was managing to make friends and they were going out after class for a drink or anything like that, and I was never invited, and I thought I was doing something wrong. I just wanted to shut myself away.
It's a gloominess, a grey cloud almost, where you couldn't say that there was anything particularly wrong, but it felt not right.
Kirsty's loneliness started when she became a mum. In social situations, she found it hard to adapt.
I can still remember going to a local Costa Coffee, and I was conscious of people looking at me, sort of feeling like I was being judged.
Loneliness is this kind of inner feeling that you're lacking something, you're not connecting. And we tend to talk about this cognition. So in your head, you know you're lonely, you can feel that you're lonely, you can name it, and it leaves you with this emotional feeling that's quite painful and distressing.
I maybe realised how bad my loneliness was when I was actually speaking to my mum on FaceTime when I was in my student accommodation. My mum definitely helped me with some aspects of how I was feeling because she has suffered from anxiety and depression and loneliness herself. So we were able to relate to each other and she helped me to try and get through it. But it's hard because she was suffering herself as well, and then her daughter was. So that made her feel even worse.
We know there are hereditary links with loneliness, so we know that there is some factor genetic that might be leading to a link between mothers and child's loneliness. Being parented by somebody that's in that loneliness state and has been in that mood mind frame for a long time means that we might transmit some of those negative feelings.
I don't want to pass my loneliness on to my children because I want them to be able to feel comfortable with others and know that they can go to a place and not feel like that they're not going to fit in.
If I'm feeling very lonely and I feel quite isolated and rejected, when my child comes home from school and they've had a similar experience, I'm more likely to want to support them and comfort them and be with them through that awful thing that's happening to them. Whereas I'm not encouraging them necessarily to brush it off their shoulders.
My son will come home from school and I can still remember there was one day he came back saying, I made a friend. And I thought it was fantastic how excited he was about this. And I'm like, what's his name? Oh, I can't remember the name. And then the next day, was your friend in today? No, he wasn't in today. And then for some reason, this friend hasn't came back since.
Just as Kirsty's trying to help her children, Angel's mum is too.
She couldn't help how she was feeling and what she was going through. She doesn't want any of this either. So she would take it all away if she could. And she's always saying to me when I'm upset and anxious and feeling lonely and depressed, like, if she could take all of that bad feeling from me and take it on herself, even though she already suffers with all of that, she would.
I don't want my son to be lonely. But I think it's still something I need to get past my sort of social anxieties to be able to help him with his, not necessarily his, but help him to be able to form the relationships.
Angel's loneliness drove her to leave university and go back home. Now she's been able to move on with her life.
I do still feel lonely. I'm in a relationship. I'm close to my family, but that loneliness is still there. And I don't know if it's ever going to go. But I just feel overall things have improved a lot.
Nicola Carroll, BBC London.
There are some studies that suggest, for example, that being without a close friend, being lonely, is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's quite hard to measure friendships. What's the quality of that friendship? What's the quantity? When people say they have a certain number of friends, what does that mean? Does it mean how many friends they have on Facebook? It is difficult to get at this quantitatively. And also people, I think, are a bit reluctant to admit sometimes to not having friends. Loneliness is in some ways quite a stigmatized condition. And so actually getting people to admit to loneliness is something that social scientists really struggle with. I think a big question now is whether we're facing a friendship recession. That's a term that Daniel Cox, a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, has used to describe this rise in the number of people who lack a certain number of close friends, who have fewer people to turn to in times of crisis. You need a shoulder to cry on, or at least someone to have a conversation with. That's less and less likely to be a friend now. And as society changes in all kinds of ways, technologically, economically, then I think it's important that we pay attention to what is very often an underappreciated human relationship, which is the friendship. Friendships come in all shapes and sizes and are also formed in very different ways and in very different places. One way we form friends is just by being at the same school as somebody, by growing up in the same place. Another way is through the situations you find yourself in, through work. There are also friends that you form through activities that are chosen, so through a voluntary activity or a sport, athletics. The fourth is online friendships. Those are friendships that are formed through a screen or over the internet in one kind or another without necessarily ever physically meeting that person. Across human history, there's always been a tribal size, I think, to friendship groups, which is somewhere in the teens, say between 12 and 15, perhaps, is a reasonable number to think about. And then there are close friends. Some people, of course, have no close friends, but most people have at least a close friend. And most people would say that the ideal number of close friends to have is somewhere around the 3 or 4 number. Friendship was something that the ancient philosophers used to take very seriously. If you go back to Aristotle, for example, in some ways seen as the ideal relationship. And one of the reasons why friendship is, I think, so important and so idealized is because it's a relationship of genuine and radical equality, and one in which you're not in the friendship in order to get something out of it for yourself. There's no sense of dependency, there's no sense of exchange. It's not a transactional relationship in any way. And in most other occasions, relationships do contain some kind of transaction, some kind of what's in this for me. But the definition of a friendship is a relationship where there is nothing in it for you other than the relationship. We've seen a decline in lots of traditional institutions, including the family, people marrying later if they do marry, obviously in areas like religion, in some cases the labor market. And so what that means is there's more of a need for people to have social relationships, connections outside of those institutions. That's where friends are hugely important. But during the same period, we've seen a real decline in the number of people who say that they have a number of close friends. There are a number of factors that could be getting in the way of forming friendships, particularly in 21st century US. Number one is geographical mobility, people moving away from their homes, moving to big cities or career opportunities, which necessarily stretches their friendship network. Parents are spending quite a bit more time on parenting, on looking after their kids, which squeezes out the time that they might have had for friendships before. There's also a lot of emphasis on work and careers, what some scholars call workism, which is a sense that just your identity is so wrapped up in your work that you don't have as much energy and time left over for friends. And then lastly, I'd point to the breakdown of relationships. As marriages break up or couples separate, that can be really fracturing of friendship groups that have been formed as a couple. Once they break up, the friendship groups very often get shattered as well. There are a few downsides to being without friends. One is lack of access to opportunities. It turns out that many people get a lot of jobs and opportunities and chances to go and do things through their friends. So friends do act as a communications information channel. But there are some quite profound effects on health too, mental health and even physical health. It's not exactly clear what the causal relationships are, what's going on, but it is clear that having friends is protective of your health in various ways. And so it's not just that being without friends can make you isolated in a sort of economic or a social sense, but it can also make you sad. And being sad, it turns out, is also bad in terms of your physical as well as emotional health.
And just so that we're clear, our helpline is open for all of you. Because to answer that question, if loneliness has become a serious problem, it has. You heard it from a bunch of people, even the people we interviewed on the street, who say ever since COVID, their life hasn't been the same. They've felt more and more alone than ever. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're someone who right now you feel sad, you feel depressed, you feel as if it's the whole world that's coming crashing down over you. But if you want a way out, if you say, you know what, I want to stop, I don't want to suffer anymore, well, then you have the opportunity to be free. What I want to do now, I want to pray for you. For you who are watching this right now and you feel bad, this word here, it shows us, the word of God, it teaches us for us to put all of those anxieties over Jesus. Everything that we've been feeling, that loneliness that you feel. Because although you feel as if you're by yourself, I promise you, God is right there. But let me pray for you. So wherever you are, just close your eyes and let me extend my hand towards you. My God, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I don't know this person. I don't know what problems they go through. But one thing I do know, You have the solution for their lives. And my Lord, if you are the one who promised to be with them, if you, my Father, said to call upon you on the day of your affliction, because you would be there, so then that's what I believe. And this person who has been suffering all their lives, this person who has been suffering since birth, since they could think, since they developed a conscience, this person who has had problems in their family, in their marriage, in their health, in every area, I determine, my Lord, that they're set free. I determine, my Father, that in Jesus Christ's name, their lives, my Lord, won't ever be the same. My God, that you set them free from all the darkness, from all the loneliness. In Jesus Christ's name, and if you believe, say amen. Amen. If you say, Pastor, I'm suffering right now and I want a way out, well then, this Sunday I invite you to our gathering of faith and miracles. We're located here in Dufferin Street, 2420 Dufferin Street, right there on the corner of Bowie Avenue, about a block and a half from Eglinton Avenue. If you want our help, we're here, ready and willing to show you the power of God, to show you how God has been working in the lives of so many people, and you can be the next one. All right? If you want to talk to us, we're available. 877-785-8700. Or if you want to send us a message through WhatsApp, you can do so. 437-233-9815. I want you to pay attention to this story. This person who was able to have a different reality. This person who came here destroyed, but now they live a different life because God was able to restore them. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.
I didn't want to have friends. I didn't want to spend time with my family. I prefer to be alone inside of my house, in my apartment. I close my room with a black bags, the garbage bags, on the windows to be dark. My name is Julia. I work as a cashier. Because of my sentimental life, it was too many situations that it wasn't making me happy. So because of that, I let my boyfriend to know. I let him know that it wasn't going that well. I wasn't feeling good with him, and we keep continue being together. But he didn't do nothing, and I wasn't doing anything to fix it. So I closed myself. I didn't want to have friends. I didn't want to spend time with my family. My family used to go out to have, the good times in the weekends. I prefer to be alone inside of my house, in my apartment. I close my room with a black bags, the garbage bags, on the windows to be dark. While more black and dark is going to be inside of my room, it was, for me, that was happy. The only thing that makes me to do it was just go to work, because I had to pay my rent. My brothers, they used to see me like that, and they used to cry for me because they were so sad seeing me like that, seeing me like a sick people. I wasn't sick, but I was laying down in a bed all day. I didn't know nothing about God. So I just know that I say, God, if you really help me, if you really exist, help me. Same week after the small prayer that I did, I was going on the street, but I was, that person that they are alive, but at the same time they are dead. I was that kind of person. I was alive, but inside I was dead. Some lady on the street, and she saw me, and she said to me, I want to invite you to come to church. So she was having a newspaper to the Universal Church. The first Fridays I was starting coming to church, that depression went away, that thoughts to kill myself went away. If I already feel like this, and I can imagine how it is to have the Holy Spirit inside of me. The day that I received the Holy Spirit, I feel like Jesus was hugging me, like, I love you. Like, I died in the cross for you, Julia. I heard everything. I'm like, oh my God, how somebody can do that for me? why I'm suffering if somebody did that for me? And I keep that until now, that God suffered on the cross for me. No more bad thoughts to kill myself, no more depression, no more nothing. I'm just so happy. I'm just so happy that before I couldn't smile myself. I couldn't smile. I could, some people, there is some people that they smile, but that is not that kind of smile that comes from inside. They just smile for outside. I used to have that kind of smile. But after that night I received the Holy Spirit, I had a truly smile inside of me. I love myself. And because I was so attached of my ex-boyfriend, God makes me free of it. And right now, I got married a year ago. I have a very good husband. He loves me. I love him. He respects me. I respect him. So God changed my life inside and outside.
Lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from my Lord, who made heaven and earth. He won't let my foot be moved. He who keeps me is the Lord, the one who keeps Israel. Will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is my keeper, He's the shade on my right hand. He keeps my soul, He protects me from all evil. He keeps my going out and my coming in, from now on and forever. The Lord is my keeper, He's the shade on my right hand. He keeps my soul, He protects me from all evil. He keeps my going out and my coming in, from now on and forever. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help comes? My help comes from my Lord, who made heaven and earth. He won't let my foot be moved. He who keeps me is the Lord, the one who keeps Israel. Will neither slumber nor sleep. keeps my soul. He protects me from all evil. He keeps my going out and my coming in. From now on and forever, the Lord is my keeper. He's the shade on my right hand. He keeps my soul. He protects me from all evil. He keeps my going out and my coming in. From now on and forever. From now on and forever.